And good evening, everybody, on this wonderful Saturday. What a marvelous day today is, and what a marvelous time it is to be alive in today's world. We're so grateful that each and every one of you are with us this evening. I want to introduce Dr. Gary Brucato. If you've never been to our channel here, Dr. Brucato is one of the world-renowned forensic psychologists, and he's also a clinical psychologist where he takes patients on a daily basis in New York City, Manhattan specifically. You can look him up. He's in the white pages. I'm sure of it, but I tease him all the time. But he's also the author of one of the, which is actually the #1 in forensic psychology today. It's called The New Evil. And we'll get into that later, but the link is going to be down below. And as Dr. Brucato and I have been speaking, we thought tonight would be a really special time for all of us to kind of get together and talk about, the next phase of this situation that everybody's been dealing with inmate number 163214. But tonight's focus is not, we're not even going to name him. We are only going to talk about the victims, because it is time for us to take a deep breath. Everybody kind of regroup again. I have my personal opinion in the new crime, the true crime community, and take a look at how healing thoughts and prayers can help the families move forward. And so that's why I wanted Dr. Brucato here tonight. So Gary, welcome this evening. What are your thoughts, just to kind of get us going here?
I think it's wonderful that you've decided to dedicate the show to this particular subject. The reality is that once the infamous, true crime case of the day passes, you're left with a lot of human beings who have to go back to the place where their loved one once was. And in the case of a true crime, although we'll be talking about crime loss generally, of course, there is an extra element that has to do with the cruelty with which the person's life ended, and the unnecessariness of it, the awfulness of it. It's very difficult to make meaning out of it. And then there's the additional element that you don't get much privacy, and that you're being pulled into the public sphere, and microphones thrust into your face, etc. It's also important to understand that not all grief is about people. Some people experience grief over coming home and discovering their house is burned to the ground, or losing a job that meant the world to them, or public humiliation and grieving the loss of an identity, or a pet. There's an area that people minimize. I've had patients that enter into serious depressions over the loss of a beloved pet, just like it was a person. So I think that grief is a very gigantic, complicated topic. And I think what we're doing is we're using this particular case as a kind of an exemplar, as one example of of how that can operate and how people can work through the various stages and aspects of grief and make enormous meaning out of it and try to in some way move on. So I know you prepared a slideshow and we're going to walk through this, but really means a lot that everybody is here. And I hope this means something to people.
Well said. And I think it's important for all of us to recognize that this is about, Xana, Kaylee, Ethan, and Maddie, and the horrific way they were taken out of this world.
Yes.
We've read the details. We're not going to get into those details this evening. We have another show prepared for tomorrow. We've got Billy Little coming on tomorrow to talk about some of the legal issues and stuff. And if you've never seen that guy, you are also in for a treat. He has handled thousands of criminal trials, including 17 death penalty cases. So he is very well known around the world.
Oh, yes.
But he'll be on tomorrow. Okay.
And I'll be watching. I'm fascinated to see what he has to say.
Okay, so this is Dr. Brucato's lane this evening. And so this is kind of where we're going to go. Those of you who know me know that I love PowerPoints and I love Dr. Brucato's perspective on what he can do and help for each and every one of us. So this is kind of the lineup where we're going to go, exploring the stages, the strategies for those, and support for healing. So it's basically a three-prong direction that we're going to go with. The agenda tonight is understanding grief, the stages of grief, coping strategies, long-term healing, and then, of course, resources for support. And, I think we're at a place, I know the families are at a place where I read a statement from Steve and Christy where they asked the world basically, how would you have liked to learn about how your daughter left this world? At the same time, all of the world heard it by reading the reports. And so that was kind of an interesting perspective, because they have felt that they were left out in, the conversations that were taking place. And so, Gary, let's start there about understanding where they're at and what they must be feeling. And then, of course, not excluding Maddie and Xana's, family, and of course, Ethan's family, but, help us understand a couple of things. One, why do you think law enforcement and the DA's office held back, it sounds like, even the basic information about how these children died to those who needed to hear it the most? What does that do to the understanding grief process?
Well, I think the question of why it was held back is a whole other program. But the effect of it being held back is enormous. I have learned from working with people who are experiencing grief, particularly people experiencing grief related to violent crime, that there is a protectiveness that a person experiences toward their loved one, where the notion of these things being out in the public feels kind of like someone else seeing the brutalized body of your loved one out in the open. It feels like there's no covering over them, no privacy, no kind of loving moment where you're in there alone and hear those things and are with this person, and they're not just an object of sensationalism or something else. There was a parent in a very prominent case, and I will never reveal what case this was, but the parent found out that a tabloid published a photo of their daughter deceased, assaulted, murdered, and she was nude. And the parent drove up and down the entire state in which they lived and bought as many copies as they could of the tabloid at every supermarket and every deli and everything else, and piled them up in the house. And they're still there. And if you say to the person, why would you do that? Spend all that money and drive all over the place? Because every single copy that's in this house is one less person seeing my daughter like that. Well, I think you have to understand that to get how people would feel that a sensational process is learning about the details of what happened to your child at the same time you are. There's no time alone with them. And that's a very big deal to people. I have heard about that exact thing from a lot of people. And it's the feeling that that the person almost doesn't belong anymore to your family privately. And it adds insult to injury. And I want to be very sensitive about that, because I think that that's a huge deal. The family has every right to be horrified about that. I understand about legal process and holding things back and all that, but then there should be a pause between that and releasing it to the public, where you go privately and sensitively, perhaps even with a counselor, to the families, and you say, now we're going to tell you some things that are going to be really difficult for you. Some images are going to be conjured in your mind that might stay with you forever. And we want to give you some support as you're hearing this for the first time. We're not just going to rip this, like rip it off. We're going to sit there and we're going to go through this with you and let you see. And this gets right to the heart of the problem with the way that the plea deal happened. Because when you're dealing with grief, as we're going to see, there's a process where you have to gradually be exposed until your brain is ready to take it in and accept that it's real. And what happened to these families is that in 1 minute, they went from thinking they were going to listen to details slowly for months and be exposed to things and accept them, to getting an email that told them that a plea was taken and now it's time to make a victim statement and get your thoughts together and here you go. And so that's just not how it works. It's an uninformed, from a clinical perspective, it's an uninformed way of dealing with people who are about to get horrifying details and have to accept something. So I think you'd agree, Chris, that was callous.
It was. And the fact that they did it the same day as the victim impact statements. And we're going to address a lot of these issues tomorrow, because, well, everybody's patting themselves on the back. I'm going to bring the experience to the field here with some power hitters tomorrow night. Don't miss it. But to your point, imagine being told the day of your impact statement. And that's what Steve went through and the rest of the family when he stood up, turned the podium, and he said what he said. And he thanked the law enforcement. But imagine hearing all of that about the cruelty and then have to face the individual that did it. So tonight, even further, we're going to try to make some sense of understanding grief. And I just want to read a couple of definitions here. And Gary, keep me on track here. It says, grief is the emotional suffering experience when losing a loved one or something cherished, affecting emotional well-being.
Right.
And the types of grief, there are different types of grief, including anticipatorial grief. And I think that being told that moment was unexpected. So they didn't know what to anticipate. To your point, they didn't have a trial, to what you just said. So they never had a chance to see, the photographs. They never had a chance, if they wanted to, of course, right? But at the same time, they're being told, hey, this is what happened. Now go out there and make your statement. I have never seen that happen in my 42 years in this business. The second one is complicated grief. What's complicated grief, Gary?
Do you have a definition of it on the screen?
Well, types of grief. Yeah, under types of grief.
So read it off, and then I want to make a comment about it.
Okay, different types of grief, including anticipatory grief, complicated grief, and disenfranchised grief, each with unique characteristics.
Right. So go ahead. But I want you to go through your slide.
Okay, no problem. Unique effects of grief. Each type of grief affects individuals differently, influencing their emotional thoughts and behaviors.
Right. Now, what you want to understand is there are really two buckets into which grief falls. There are people who overfeel and underfeel, in my experience. So there's the kind of grief, and some people have both. There's the kind of grief where everything under the sun makes you sad because it's connected in some way to this thing. You go out with people, you're eating dinner, you're looking down at the plate, you're talking, you're trying to make chit chat. The person floats into your mind and you burst into tears. You are walking down the street and a autumn leaf blows past your feet. You tear up. You can't explain why. I've had patients describe things to me that are unbelievable. They're triggered by things that are just unbelievable. I'm walking down the street and I find that somebody lost a button from their coat. And I can't explain why, but it just made me so sad. I couldn't stop crying. So that it's this unbelievable projection into the world around you, a sensation that there's a hole in the heart of the world. And then for other people, there's a numbness. The whole house could explode and you feel nothing. And some people vacillate between the numbness and the unbelievable, incredible overfeeling. And sometimes it's so completely random that you go from the deadness to suddenly experiencing the grief and then going back to the deadness. And for some people, the grief is anticipatory, meaning you know something is coming. So you've started to get numb or overly emotional even before it happens. So you have a loved one in the hospital and they just want to see you. And you can't bring yourself to go because you can't feel it, the reality that they're going to pass away. So you think you're mad at them or you don't care and you're hating yourself for it. And you don't understand why you can't bring yourself to go there and see them. Or when you go, it's so intellectualized that all you do is make chit chat about how are your tests. Oh, you look good today. You know, your hair looks a little better today. I know they took a lot of it off during the cancer treatment. That kind of thing. So that you're almost becoming mechanical in advance, or bursting into tears before it even happens. There's that. And so you want to get that people go back and forth. And what happens with complicated grief is you just can't seem to get past it in any short amount of time. It compounds and lasts years and years and years. And what happens is for everyone is, and I think Brian Gray's point is really, really important, that it's going to be different for every single person. You're right, Brian. The other thing is it's totally valid. No one can tell you how to grieve. So, for example, with the Gonzalez family, one of the most infuriating things that you would see on podcasts and things is people being critical that they were doing so much talking to people, that they wanted that kind of support. What business is it of anybody to tell people how to deal with grief? That's how some people deal with grief. And so I think that's one of the things you also want to understand is never criticize anybody else's grief. People have a different way of dealing with it. You know, Chris, what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, and
Right.
you, and so how do all these emotional responses here, like sadness,
Mhm.
anger, confusion, guilt, and loneliness? I mean, can you experience them simultaneously?
Yes.
I know in my own experience, and I don't want to focus on me tonight at all. I want to focus on the families. I want to focus on the kids that they lost, their children. Uh, but I experience, and Karen and I experience waves, just waves.
That's right.
And was that a normal, response, right, to the physiological, the physical and the physiological symptoms? I mean, there were days, right, where I physically felt myself
Hmm.
going through a symptomology like is described here.
Everything is normal when it comes to grief. All bets are off when it comes to grief. But you must take into consideration when a person is dealing with grief that they're not themselves. I have seen in during grief everything from dissociation to physical illness that intensifies experiencing physical symptoms like, everything from hair loss to skin changes to breathing problems to everything else, stomach and GI issues. I've seen that. I've seen people that suddenly develop psychiatric difficulties they've never had in their entire life, waking up with horrible, in the middle of the night, having panic attacks, sleep disturbances, nightmares. Uh, there are even people who start to experience psychosis and they start to have hallucinatory experiences and things like that. It all there is no limit to what a person can experience, and it is all valid. And there is also no way to tell a person how long it's going to take. I have to say there is a special grief when there's no way to rationalize that it's part of the normal course of human events. There is grief that might be experienced by someone who comes to speak to a clinician or a friend or a family member because they've lost a loved one who was 95 years old. And then there's the grief of being a 55-year-old parent who is burying their 25-year-old child. That is very difficult for a human being to understand. And any human being that has ever experienced a loss like that knows that what happens is you join a kind of club. You everyone who's experienced grief is in that kind of club with you, and you meet a person who's gone through grief and you kind of know the territory they've been in. You've been to that place. It's like you visited the same country. And it's like Emily Dickinson, which has said, I measure every grief I meet with narrow probing eyes. I wonder if it weighs like mine or has an easier size. That's what you do. And I think that what happens is your life becomes divided up kind of the way history is. Like when we talk about BC and AD, there's life before the loss and life after it. And you understand, Chris, right? What I'm talking about when I say that. The way history is hewn and broken in pieces because of the loss, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You want
Absolutely.
to explain a little bit of about, maybe give some perspective to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's nothing compared to, and this is interesting that I say this now because it's been,
Yeah,
21 years for our family, right? September 3rd,
right.
2003.
And may as well have been yesterday.
Yeah, I can remember
Right.
yesterday like it was there. And what was interesting about it is Karen and I were at Disneyland, and we were by the teacups watching our niece. We had my sister-in-law and their family was visiting us when we were in California. And it was, the phone rang. I cannot tell you to this day, and I don't think my sweetheart can either, how we left Disneyland. I don't remember.
Hmm.
It was that impactful to just what you said. I lost my breath. And now, mind you, I was a homicide investigator, and I thought I understood what grief and pain was. I did not realize the depth of hearing those words, your son is deceased. And it was over the phone. So I can't imagine, I've watched all the families and their responses, on some of the programs that got up there. One of the saddest things that I heard wasn't when Ethan's mom says, where do you put your son? Where do you go? What do you do?
Right.
Which was a very well done documentary. And then Dad says he goes visits him every single day. In the basement, they put him in an urn, and they set up, I'm assuming, just some amazing, place where they can have their moments with him. Go ahead.
Well, it did seem, Chris, watching the impact statements, that everybody was at a different stage. We're going to talk about that, but you could see. Yeah. I mean, obviously, we're not inside people's minds, but they manifested indications of being at all different places in terms of how they're dealing with this. And you have to remember that before you can deal with something, it first has to become real. It has to become concrete. You have to sit still and take it in. And you need support while you do that. You shouldn't be told that in an insensitive way.
Yeah.
So let's walk through the stages.
Yeah. So tell us about denial and isolation.
Well, the writing is so little that you have there. Why don't you read what's there, and then I'll elaborate.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. I think everyone else sees it larger than I do, but for some reason in StreamYard it's tiny. Yeah.
Okay, understanding denial. Denial is the first stage of grief, right, where individuals may refuse to accept the reality of their loss and feelings of isolation. During denial, individuals often experience feelings of isolation as they cope with profound emotions.
Right. So the human brain is a remarkable thing, and it seems to have a kind of defensive function where when an experience is too emotionally charged, it paradoxically feels the least. It will shut it off. It's like it reminds me, when I talk to patients about it, I say it's sort of like a surge protector in your house. The electrical charge is too powerful and it shuts it off before the house burns down. And when that happens to people, they start to judge themselves sometimes, or to become completely confused, or in a kind of instinctive, due to an instinctive sense that they need time alone to begin to process this, they sometimes pull away from the world. Sometimes they pull away because they lose their interest in pleasurable things. Sometimes they feel guilty having fun or enjoying themselves or going to work or putting their clothes on in the morning, because everything just feels so unfair that they're able to do that. I've had people describe to me that every time they get out of bed and put their feet down on the floor, they think, my child never going to do that again. Why should I? What's the point of brushing my teeth? I'm never going to smile again anyway. What do I have to go to work for? Put money in the bank to keep myself alive? Death can come at any time. What's the point? So they start to get that kind of terrible feeling, and this starts to come after initially dealing with, at least some people, and these stages can go in different orders, even though it says first. It's a kind of inability to accept the reality of it. Keeping busy. So, I've seen people where they think if they just keep talking, they don't have to take in what you just said to them, right? So it's a pressured thing, and they're going on, and you're going, I'm trying to tell you something. Well, no, I can't. And they're talking and talking and talking and talking. And they know that as soon as those words stop coming out of their mouth, they have to take in that you just told them what happened, right? And there are some people who do that with their behavior. They keep busy, they buzz around like a bee, so they don't have to sit still and notice. So there's that kind of denial thing. And then we move into anger and bargaining. And anger, of course, is when you feel that there's a source of this pain. You want, in some symbolic or literal way, to be violent toward it. You want to be angry toward it. You want to punch it. You want to beat it. You want to take it out of the world. You're furious. There's that. And bargaining is a process where a person almost like tries to make a deal with life or with God, with a higher power. They'll say things like, if you spare my wife this cancer, I'll dedicate the rest of my life to you. If you just take this pain away from me and make sense out of it, I'll donate a very large amount of money to the poor. That kind of thing. So it's that, or sometimes you'll even hear, I told God to give it to me. Let me get the disease and cure my kid. That kind of thing. And so, and some people do the bargaining thing in a complicated psychological way. So they'll start to do something to like atone for their life, or to try to do some really good deed, because they have an unconscious fantasy that by doing that, they're going to somehow undo this grief. For some people, grief is rendered more complicated because they think they did something that fell short of what they would have done, they would have wanted to do for that loved one. They didn't like the person very much. The person died during a fight. I've seen that. You have a huge fight, and the person goes out and gets hit by a car. They die in their sleep, and you think that you did it. It was the fight. The fight made them have the heart attack. I wished my mother dead. I hated her. I wished her dead, and she died, and it was my fault. So then they try to do something to undo the guilt, and then in a way that's a kind of bargaining too. So I'll say to a person, why are you giving all your money away to charity? I don't know, just feels like the right thing to do. And then you probe it, and after 5 or 6 psychotherapy sessions, person connects the dots and says, it's guilt. My guilt is huge. I can't stop mourning because it feels like I'm giving myself a pass. So there's that too. There's that kind of thing, and that falls under this bargaining. And then finally, for some people, the kind of profound depression takes over as part of this process. That's where you really start getting close to acceptance. And then there's this process of one day feeling that it's okay to move on somehow, whatever that means, or just acknowledging the person's really gone. And for that kind of process, you can see anything. You can see making meaning out of it. You can see dedicating your life to a cause that the person believed in, or a cause related to how they died, or the crime that took them from this world. It could be a religious meaning. I've seen people have spiritual conversions. I've seen people look for signs, and they'll say, it's really weird. My dad was born in 1932, and I was walking down the street today and I found a penny. And sure enough, it said 1932. And to make it even weirder, it said 1932D, and his name was David. That kind of thing.
I just had, Karen and I just had that happen.
Yeah.
At a,
Yeah.
I laugh at it, now for me, for 21 years later, and Karen,
yeah,
we were at a sushi restaurant called Karma.
Uh-huh.
And our bill was number 18. That was Ryan's hockey number. And when it came to us, we just smiled and we looked at each other like, he's doing fine. He's fine. And that's exactly to your point. It was kind of an idiocracy of some sort. I'm sure of it. I don't even know if that's a word, but it just it was like this. Oh, wow. Yeah. That felt like it was something from Ryan. Right.
Well, why is that stupid? I don't think it's stupid. I think if there really is another side,
yeah,
I'm sure people try to tell us. And my sense is that what they're trying to say, if you believe that, and I do, I think what they're trying to say is, I love you, And I'm in a place that's so beautiful that if you could see it, you'd understand why I love it here and why it's beautiful here. And yeah, I got cheated out of stuff, but wait till you see what's on the other side. And what I think they want to say is, I want to be at peace, and you have to be for me to be. I want you to be okay. You don't have to feel guilty that you feel okay, because I need you to be so I can be at peace. And I'll be here. I'm waiting for you. And the way you want to think about it is that for people who make a spiritual meaning, the idea is that in that place where these people are, irrespective of whatever faith you have, where there's a narrative in which you go someplace else, what you're taught is that in that place there's no more pain, and there's a kind of a perfection of the body and spirit or whatever, and the answers to everything you've ever wanted to know are there in that blinding place. It's like if one day you discovered a hole in the backyard, and in that hole was every single thing you ever lost in your whole life. Something fell off your coat when you were 5 years old. You lost your pencil in kindergarten. You lost your favorite toy out in the yard. You were tossing around a tennis ball and it fell in the bushes. And it's all there waiting for you in that one little place. And you go, oh my God, I thought it was gone. I'd never see it again. Here it is all together. Well, that's kind of what those faiths tell us, that those things are just waiting for you. And I have no doubt that people every day, because they come to therapy and talk about it, and they are embarrassed about it because they think it's weird. But they tell you in therapy and in private that they get signs all the time. One of the most powerful signs people describe is dreams.
Yeah.
I'm sure, Chris, you know a thing or two about that, right? Have you
Oh,
ever had a dream like that?
There's no question about
I
that.
have too. Right. And the dreams are usually like this. And I don't know if it happens because the brain is accepting, like this acceptance phase we talked about, or if it's authentically spiritual experience. That's up to people to think about. But the dreams usually have a theme that's something like this. It depends where you are in the process, right? Because the dreams can have themes of being terrified or losing the person or looking all over and they're not there and crying. But if you're in an acceptance phase, the dream is something like that the person either looks the way they did in life, they're wearing the uniform they wore to school, sports outfit that they wore, they look like they're off to school, or they are in a place that symbolizes a kind of heaven. I've heard everything from the trees are made of gold, they were sitting on a couch made of diamonds, they were sitting someplace and there was this incredibly beautiful sky behind them, and there was more than one sun. It was so bright, and there were multiple suns in the sky. I've heard things like that every star you can imagine was around them, and so it's like a perfect, or it can be a place that's kind of like heaven in the sense that it was their favorite place. I've heard things like that too. We were the place we always used to go fishing, and the person says to you, I'm okay, I love you, I'm with you, I'm fine. And yeah, people, I know there are people in this audience who've had that dream, and some of them will have it that haven't had it yet. And a lot of people come and they say, I don't know how to explain it, but I feel it was them, and I feel it's okay. And I think that is just so important to people, and it like happens on schedule. It just happens, and then they come and they tell you, yeah, it happened, and somehow I don't feel guilty anymore to go outside because I know they're okay. Now, Chris, that feeling of wanting the person to be safe on the other side is one piece of it, and the other piece of it is, did I do enough for them? Did I do enough for them?
Like
Right.
a survivor's guilt.
Yes, that's a big deal too. That's a big deal too,
And I
because Freud
worry
used to talk
the
about that. Yeah.
families here
Yeah.
that are going through this, I mean, just
Yeah.
all, the moms and the dads that are, there's this emptiness. I mean, I don't know how better way to describe it, but, and I think that comes with, you're battling emotions that are just so powerful during this. And by the way, if you're just joining with us, we are so grateful that you're here this evening. Gary and I talked about this subject, and we just thought it was so appropriate right now with what the families
That's
are
right.
going through, and quite frankly, what probably tens of thousands of people are going through, because these tragedies brought back so many emotions and so many
Vicarious
different.
trauma. Yes, we all, and it opens the wound up again. See,
Yeah.
Chris, one of the other things is this: when someone is young and they die suddenly, the other piece of it is it's so unexpected that chances are you didn't say the kinds of things you would say to an older person the day before or earlier in the day, because it never occurred to you you'd lose them. When somebody is 100 years old, every time you talk to them, you say, I love you. I love you. I just want you to know that, because you never know when one day you'll get the call, but you're sort of expecting it. Or someone is ill, for example. But this is different. This is a situation where, you know how it is. You're a parent, and every night you have a phone call, and sometimes you argue, or the person's just telling you the mundane stuff of the day. And you go, all right, I'll get some sleep. I'll talk to you in the morning. It never occurs to you it's the last time you're going to hear their voice. Never in a million years. And then that ordinary conversation is the one that you echo in your mind over and over, staring at the ceiling. What did I say? Why didn't I say I love you? Why didn't I tell them how proud I was of them? I should have told them all the time, that kind of thing. And it bothers you. It eats at you, right? So that happens to people too. And they devour themselves with that experience. And that's why one of the most important things to do is to say to people, look at the people who are alive around you, and know that you never know when they won't be there. One day they won't be. In any group of people, there's going to be a process whereby one of them passes first, and then the second one, and then the third one, and then until you're left with one. And then that person does. And you always have to kind of make sure that you're saying to the people around you and holding them close and just saying, I'm just so happy you're here. I love you. I'm proud of you. If anything ever happens, just know that. If anything ever happens to me, I just want you to know that. I couldn't have been prouder of you any day of the week. And, I don't want to take you for granted. Chris, the feeling I'm talking about, the way you torture yourself, that you didn't say certain things or do certain things, or
Yeah, but
I've been there. Yeah.
yes, I mean, there were things obviously post that I reflected on, but there's also, it would be selfish of me to
No.
not say we didn't have, Karen and I, an amazing blessing before he passed.
Oh.
Karen was 3 months pregnant with Dylan when Ryan died. So we were picking out a coffin at one end and a crib at the other. And it was a really difficult time for our family. But the blessing in that, when I say blessing, is he was at our house, and he asked me, he said, Dad, can I talk to you? And I said, yeah, sure, pal. What's up? And long story short, we were sitting on the couch, and he said, Dad, I want to ask you a quick question. I said, yeah, what's going on here? Now, the folks don't know, the backstory, but long story short, my son was ranked number 3 in the United States in ice hockey.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
It's easy to forget that, right, what Chris, because you told that before, but it's just so extraordinary.
Yeah, and he had an agent. His guy's name was Thane Campbell. He played for the Montreal, Canadian Hockey League, MTHL, and he was due for the NHL. He was ranked 3rd in the country, and he got hit in the head with a stick, and it broke his jaw here and here across the front and the back, and they sewed him up, and they dropped him down. He was playing Canadian hockey up in Canada, And they dropped him to the North American Hockey League, NAHL, and he played with a team called Texas Tornadoes. Long story short, the night he passed, he said, "Dad, I want to talk to you." And he, he'd been healing. And I said, "What's up, bud?" And I thought he was going to ask me about girls, 20 years old, and, I need dad conference. But he said to me, "I want you to know something." This is what he said to me. These are my last words of my son, our son. He said, "Did Jesus die for my sins?" And
Really?
said, yes. And I said, "Ryan," I said, why are you asking this question?" He goes, "Dad, I want you to know that Jesus died for my sins. And I want you to know that I know that."
Wow.
And I was like, where did that just come from? Where did that come from? And he stood up. I stood up. He gave me a hug and he said, "Where's Mom?" I said, "She's upstairs. She'll be here in a minute." And Karen came downstairs and he leaned over and kissed her stomach and said, "I love you." And then he gave, Mom a great big hug, walked out of the house. We found out later that he called our oldest son, Ian, left the voicemail on his phone, said, "I love you, Ian." And then he called Lisa, our other daughter, called her, left, because he was supposed to take her. She was going up to college in Washington State. Long story short, the next phone call we had was the accident had gone down. And it was, I'm writing that book, right? Right, Garen?
Yeah.
And I lay this out, the horror of it, but it was, you cannot describe it. You can't, because it's just the way it is. And
That's why it's a club. You're in it or you're not. You felt it or you haven't. That's the way it is. If you can't understand it from 30,000 feet, you have to have been there. I mean, I know people who go to counselors and so forth, and the counselors never had grief. Well, they could help, but it's different if they have, because they can empathize with you. They understand what you've been through.
Right. And so when, people, to your point, right, are criticizing these families, trying to figure out what the coping strategies are. How do I get to the next thing? And for me, it was literally a couple of years later that I was driving. And you have to understand, at the same time, I was getting bombarded by some other stuff that was going on in San Diego County. Even to this day, it still goes on. The Michael Crow crap. I was under the microscope for all of that crap, which, is a whole nother day, long story short. But anyway, I'm driving home one day and I got the radio on and I had this epiphany, and I'm hoping that the families, if you're listening, this day will come for you as well, where I was driving and I hear that a father was in a car accident with his whole family, and he lost 5 family members, and he was the only survivor.
Oh, yeah. I've heard stories like that.
And I remember this feeling that hit me that said, "Christopher, you can do this." And I thought, oh my gosh, that guy has it worse than me. He woke up, "Where's my family?" And they're all gone. And I stopped internally saying, okay, this is bigger than all of us. And when I used to, teach, and to law enforcement, I would talk to them about, the epiphany of pain and suffering, and to be empathetic much more towards these victims' families, because they don't recognize what the totality of how far this is going to go.
And I think Bethany and Dylan feel that guilt of we're the ones who lived.
Yeah,
I'm sure they feel that.
Absolutely. And I see some of that in our Dylan, because he never met his brother. Karen was 3 months pregnant. And so he grew up hearing about Ryan, but he's never met Ryan. And so, we had to navigate through that, like Steve and Christy and Ethan's parents and Xana's parents, the brothers and sisters, they're all trying to navigate, what that meant. And it's different for everybody. I mean, somebody, you hear their voice, you smell their clothes.
Oh, smell is the worst. The smell is the most primitive and the one that gets you. For some reason, the smell is brutal. Especially if it's an unusual one. And sometimes it can be comforting because it reminds you of the person. I can't tell you how many patients I've had and people I know have told me stories like that. It's so emotional. You're right, Roxanne. I know you mentioned earlier you've been through grief, and you're right. Music too. Music is like that also. That's also true, Montana. But there's something about, like, I smell my father's aftershave. I smell the soap that my mom used to use on her hands. I don't know how to explain it. It just smells like my kid. I smell him on the blanket. I don't know how to explain it. I smell it. It gives you chills and I've had experiences like that, haven't you? Where smell floods you with memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Karen and I handled it 2 separate ways, right? And so the rest of our family, our kids, etc. And so what's the value of the emotional support, seeking it outside of friends and family sometimes, and then sharing those experiences like we are tonight? And everybody that's here, thank you all so much for being here. And Gary and I talked extensively again about this conversation.
We talk about things like this all the time, Chris. That's why we're dear friends.
I know it, but this is I think it's so important for the families I want to memorialize this so they can go back and watch this 100 times.
Yeah.
And hopefully it will offer some process. It'll never give an explanation and an understanding. I think you and I both know that, Gary.
But I feel compelled to say, God bless you for doing that, because it makes you a little island, a little bit of light in the middle of a sea of darkness that these people have been dealing with. And it's a little place where you say, nobody's going to judge you here. You do things on your own terms. The control is yours. You feel whatever you want to. We've been there. Grief is grief. And you tell all these people who are judging you, screw you. Who cares what you think? I'm dealing with it my way. And I think that's just so powerful. So God bless you for that. That's a really beautiful thing you're doing. But Chris, this question you're asking about professional help, you have to remember that even among animals, there's a mourning process. For example, elephants have burial grounds. That's where we get the expression "an elephant never forgets," because they visit burial grounds where the deceased are. This idea of human beings needing to be around other human beings when they mourn is as old as people. It goes all the way back to the beginning of time. I always say, and it's something that's in the first chapter of the new book I'm writing, just sort of a follow-up to The New Evil, that I accidentally came across this painting once in a museum situation, and it was the only painting I had ever seen showing Adam and Eve being comforted about the loss of Abel. In other words, the idea of them hugging one another and getting each other through the death of their child, which of course foreshadows being at the foot of the cross where God loses a child, right? But the idea is you get you have this mourning scene. I had never seen anything like that before, because we always think about the murder, Cain killing Abel. But what about the family? Right? So it's just that always struck me. And I think that what happens is there's something so human about just having another person to talk to who is alive, and that becomes a love object, something to love and link with at that time, that is part of the healing process. And death is something that's going to touch every one of us. I mean, that, like when Larkin in the poem Abad said, most things never happen, but this one will. That death is that one thing there's no denying. It's going to happen. And so as a consequence, any human being can talk to you about it. We don't want to talk about it. It's the elephant in the room, but we're all coming in for a landing sooner or later, right? And so there's something about having the support of a human being, even if you just go to a therapist and you stare at the wall, there's a human being there. There's a life force there. Even if you go out and you get a cat or a dog or a house plant, there's life around you, and it's a support system. And even if it's connecting virtually, even if it's a chat room, even if it's something like this, come in here. I know there are people that use the interview room that way, and they come every week, and they're surrounded by people that are alive and care, right? So that idea of getting professional help, there's no shame in that. In fact, I can't even understand how a person could get through grief without somebody like that. Now, sometimes you don't go get professional help. Sometimes you have this enormous blessing, and every one of us who's been through grief knows this. You will remember the rest of your life the person who called you up and said, I'm here if you want to talk. Here, I brought you this. You need anything? And I really mean it. I'm not just saying that. You need anything at all, I'm here. You will remember it till the day you die. Every single person who was kind to you and said, you want to go out and get something to eat? I know you're having a hard time. I want to give you a place to talk. I want to listen, right? So that is huge. Thank God that we have those kinds of people. That's why I always say, never judge a person based on how kind they are or awful to you until there's a crisis. And in the crisis, you will see what people really are. People that you thought were your best friends are nowhere to be found when you're in grief. And then there's the person that you didn't think cared about you at all, and they are right there with you. Pay attention to that. The grief has a way of telling you who your real friends are and who's really good. That's why I like that you're the one doing this program, Chris, tonight. It tells the world what you really are. See, and that's beautiful. And so I think that's the other piece of it is it's a network of support, whether it's a pet, a plant, a friend, and then there's the spiritual support. There are the people that go to church or synagogue or a temple or a mosque, and they feel connected and
Well,
useful, right? And that's so important too.
to your point, let's talk about these healthy routines and self-care while
Yes,
going through the process.
absolutely. Let's read off what you've got there. They're all very important.
Okay, it says importance of healthy routines. Healthy routines provide structure and promote physical and mental well-being, aiding in recovery and emotional balance. The benefits of exercise. Now, I look a lot bigger than I used to be. So Karen's always like, get up and move, would you? But the benefits of exercise, regular physical activity enhances mood. That is a true statement.
Yes.
Reduces stress and improves overall health, making it a vital part of self-care. Mindful practices. This is something I do all the time.
Yes,
I,
very important.
I'm in the moment. I practice that, I pray, and I talk to God. Meditation and mindful practices can help reduce anxiety and promote emotional well-being, contribute to health healing process. And then the journaling allows self-expression and reflection, enabling individuals to process emotions and track personal growth. I think these are all sound counsel. Am I off base, doctor?
Well, now obviously, we can't give advice to an individual in a setting like this because everybody's different. But as
Right.
general guidelines for life and for moving on, whatever that means with life, these are very, very important things that are suggested by grief counselors typically. Now, that first one about exercise is very interesting because there's this thing in psychology that's called the James Lange principle. And the James Lange principle says that sometimes the brain can feel things in reverse. So, in other words, just as an example, there are studies that show that if you take 100 people, let's say, and you put them in a room and you show them a movie, and the people on the left side, the 50 people on one side, smile, and the 50 people on the other side frown, the people with the smile will rate the movie better. So their brain thinks they enjoyed the movie because they were smiling. It says, well, I must be smiling because I liked it, even though you're making the smile. Well, the same thing happens with exercise. When you get depressed, you don't want to move. If you move, your brain says, maybe I'm not depressed. So you fool your brain by getting out and moving. And it works. It really does. It's hard to do it, but it has that kind of weird way of sort of fooling you. It'll flood you with the kind of positive, neurotransmitters, hormones, whatever, and you just start feeling okay. But so that's important. But the other thing is, and I love what Keep Trying said here, because it anticipated precisely what I was going to say, and it says, Dr. Laura often says, not everything can be fixed. See, let me see. I want to get the exact quote because it's great. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. Dr. Laura often says, not everything can be fixed, only endured. And that's important because sometimes it's not about doing something. It's about accepting and tolerating and sitting with the truth. And sometimes you think that you've come to a conclusion, but sometimes it really comes from outside of you. Like you use the word epiphany, right? So sometimes you're delivered from something. You have a spiritual moment where you go, this feels like something's being taught to me, and I strangely feel better, right? And it's beautiful that people say that. It means the world to me to think that anybody gets any whiff of comfort from anything that's being said tonight.
And if you're in
That
New
means a
York
lot to
City
me.
in Manhattan, you can have Dr.
Well,
Brucato as a
of course
therapist.
you get. I'm
Where
pretty
his,
full, but
his emphasis.
but I try. I mean, I have a wait list out the door, but I do get wonderful calls all the time from people that, and so yeah, that you're welcome. Keep trying. You really are. But I want to understand. I want to also emphasize that when I personally have dealt with loss, I also try to remember that, as Oscar Wilde said, you only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough. There's something about the quality of life that if you could be ready, there's a different feeling about loss and death. If you live in a state of having your affairs in order, you have a different experience of loss and death. You know, it's important to kind of make your peace today. If there's someone that you've argued with, don't tell them tomorrow. Tell them today. Call them up and say, I don't know which one of us is maybe not going to be here soon, but that may happen. And I just want you to know I'm sorry, and what you did, I forgive you. It's okay. If there's something you want to do, remember that movie Up? They want a marvelous movie about grief, one of the best movies about grief ever made, right? Remember that beautiful movie? I think it was
I love
Pixar.
it.
I'm nuts about it. It's a very Buddhist movie about the symbolism of carrying the grief around, like the house you can't let go of because you think, it would be wrong. And you carry it around like a turtle or a tortoise has a carapace on its back, right? And then one day it just flies up, it goes up to heaven, right? The acceptance scene. It's hard. I'll never forget, I was experiencing a loss and I went to the movies to go see Up. And I was the only person in the theater. There was nobody else there. It was this weird thing where no one else showed up to the movie. And I was in there alone with the stupid popcorn and the empty seats all around. And there was this movie, and the good Lord couldn't have orchestrated it any better to have that private place with that movie, And so I think it's one of those movies that drives home the idea, like, there's a trip you want to take it now. Do it today. Book the ticket. You never know. There may not be a tomorrow. The place may not be there. I had a patient who told me one time that they had been planning a trip for the first time in their life to the Trade Center on September 10th, 2001. And on September 11th, there was no Trade Center.
That's
You know what I'm saying? You don't know. You don't know.
Swiss Miss Squirrel. Remember the dog?
I love it. Yeah.
You know,
Squirrel.
Squirrel.
Right.
Well, you want to hear a crazy story? So we have a friend. His name is Dan, and his mother is a flight attendant. They were in Boston at the gate to get on Flight 11 that went into the World Trade Center.
Oh, Lord.
And his dad called the mom. They were on standby and said, I don't know why, but I have a sense you're not supposed to get on that flight. I swear to you, this happened.
Yeah.
And they didn't get on the flight. And oh my gosh, when he came back to where, we live, and, he's a friend of ours, they told this story, and it was like, man, talk about divine intervention.
Well, that's just it, Chris. See, you called that divine intervention. That's a type of meaning making that, for people like us who have spiritual natures, that's how we make meaning. But people make other kinds of meanings. And the meaning making is another thing that is incredibly human to do. Animals, I don't know if they do that, but you need language and meaning to kind of get through things sometimes. And that thing of sitting and saying, the reason this happened is this. I'm gonna take this thing and I'm gonna channel it into. So, for example, I always tell you, Chris, that in the homicide work you did, where you dealt with people who lost children, every day of your life, you're keeping people from dealing with some of the pain you did. For example, if you get some kind of slime off the street that's taking children's lives, there are people that we don't know what the alternative universe would look like where you didn't do that and someone else's kid was taken. If you could see, I always think, if there's a heaven, I believe there is, I know there is, but some people don't, right? If there is one, I always think one of the things that could happen there is we'll be able to see all the different things that could have been if things didn't go a certain way. And we don't realize how many people's lives we touch through this kind of butterfly effect. And I think sometimes, Chris, you're keeping people from terrible pain and you don't realize it, right? It's just a day's work for you, right? And every time you do that, you're preventing another person from having to lose a child or go through that kind of awful misery. And in doing that, you channel what happened to you into helping other people. And you're doing it tonight. You're doing it tonight. That's just such a beautiful thing. And I think for other people, that's the meaning they make. I wouldn't be surprised, for example, if families that were affected by what happened in this tragedy wind up dedicating their lives to things like changing the law, or doing charitable work, or going on TV, or and talking about it, or running for office, or writing a memoir that helps people, or helping out in a church, or doing something. In other words, it that's a way of making meaning out of it. And you see, oh, thank you, Jill Sanderson, for saying that it helped you. That's beautiful. But the other thing is, for those who take a spiritual approach, try to find ways to kind of, in your heart, talk to the person and say, I know you're here. You would have loved this.
Yeah.
Don't you do that, Chris? I do.
I wrote a song about it. It's called Wind.
You wrote a song about your feeling your son's presence.
About my son. It's called Wind. And you can if anybody wants to hear it, they can hear it in the playlist. It's down there. It's the Wind song. This is a good segue into long-term healing.
Yes, that's right.
To what you were just talking
about. And purpose. That's right.
Seeking new purposes, volunteering work, honoring their memory.
That's right.
Why are these all so important, these pieces of the grieving healing process?
Because making meaning out of what happened is necessary for your brain to kind of move on in a mathematical way with making sense out of it. If it doesn't feel like it's moving toward anything, you get stuck. We need those narratives to say, it didn't feel along the road that this made sense. I'm stuck. I can't make sense out of it. It's crazy. But what happens is that human beings, because they're inherently, I'd like to think, are inherently kind of altruistic and caring. I think we're designed to do that. Oh, that's sweet, Annabelle. They will find a way to kind of to say to the person or to themselves, there's a story here. Maybe it doesn't make any sense to me, but it has something to do with going out into the world and doing something with this. And that's different for everybody. It's different for everybody. And some people, they don't have to do that. For some people, it's quiet. I know people that if you bring up a person who passed away, they get very upset. Say, I don't talk about that. I do it privately in my heart. There are some people that if you show them a photograph of someone who passed away, they get upset with you. They say, I don't want to reminisce. That's for me. And that's okay. But everybody's got a different way. Everybody's got a different way. I know people who do things like go to the cemetery every week for decades. Everybody's got their own way. But it feels like you're keeping the person there.
Yeah, that's a really another conversation that we're going to have here as we continue to go on.
Which one?
Is maintaining those connections. And
yeah. I anticipated your slide, Chris, but
I know you
because you've been there. You understand how this operates, the order of it, and that's what comes next.
Yeah, the importance of remembrance. Remembering the deceased can aid in the healing process and provide comfort to those who are grieving. That one of the hardest pieces of healing was taking that stone and putting it in the ground, because it wasn't ready yet when he was buried. So I had me and a very close friend, a very dear friend, Vince Martinez.
He was there with you through the process.
Yeah, and
I bet you'll never forget it.
I actually got busted by the cemetery. They were supposed to put it in, and I did it with Vince. And the guy came over and he goes, "What are you guys doing?" And I said, "Oh, well." Anyway, I didn't care at that point, right? And so anyway, the importance of remembering and then creating rituals. Established rituals or traditions can help individuals feel connected to their loved ones even after they're gone. And I found early on that those were pretty intense in the beginning, but they, I started to think about, I get anxious when his birthday's coming or the date, the anniversary, like his birthday was just June 30th. And, I had a very difficult week, being honest with everybody. Right. Because, I went into the what if, right? He dies at 20 and he would have been 41 years old. And so I started reflecting on what all of that meant. So it's important to have, also memorials and tribute space. So for me, it's the guitar. It's my relationship with the Lord. It's my relationship with my wife and our other children, and it's the moments that we just take time to be with each other. And I know that Steve, Christy, and Maddie's Maddie's family, Ethan's family, Xana's family, they're all dealing with it differently. And like if you just got here, Gary said in the very beginning, and we all have to be conscious of this. This is a very, very difficult time.
Yes.
For these families, because I told Steve recently in conversations where I said to him, I said, look, when all the lights and the cameras and the action all goes away, you're going to feel the weight and the totality of all of this. Please be prepared for that. And this was before they had no trial. And what drives me crazy, and tomorrow we're going to talk about this on the program as well, and don't take this wrong, audience, but I have to call it as I see it. Okay, I saw Chief Fry on the news yesterday, and here's the first thing out of his mouth. We've had bigger incidences than this. We had an officer killed. That is not what you say to the world. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not diminishing the officer's death. But when you tell the world the very first thing out of his mouth, and I'm going to play that tomorrow night, the very first thing is we've had bigger incidents than this. You have diminished the impact that this family is feeling right now because you did a comparative analysis from the very beginning. And that's where I just take exception to, these press conferences and all this other stuff that was going on, because it's just not right. You can have your 15 minutes of fame, but give it time. Let the family start to heal. The paint's not dried. And you're already out there saying, look how great we painted the barn. And, I don't know, Gary, am I overreacting here, or, how insensitive, and how inconsiderate it is for all these guys to be running around the track saying, look at me.
I mean, I don't know what goes on in people's minds and why they do certain things. I only know I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do it because to the people who lost loved ones, that was their loved one. Yes, you're going through grief too, but this is not a statistic. They're not just a number on a checklist. They're my loved one. They had a name. They had a body. They were alive. They had a life. And I know I care about all these other people too. Yes, but please don't make them sound like just a number on a list, a checklist. That's yesterday's work. That makes it feel like you're sweeping them into a dustbin.
Yeah,
and I understand that.
Because
so don't Don't you get that? That's why that hurts? Of course.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, doesn't that go towards the next slide here? It disenfranchises the families in navigating the grief process that they're going through, because then that brings up this, these resentments or coping with challenges, down at the bottom there, right? Emerging from grief can enhance an individual's capacity to cope with challenges, with further challenges and adversities. Okay, fine. It does strengthen us, but it delays that healing process when you hear the authorities and you hear a family say, when Steve stood up and told the world, when he turned that podium towards that guy, 163214, I'm not going to talk about him. I'm not going to use his name. That was a powerful, I'm taking back my family, my life. And then you have the chief of the agency at the time, right behind that on the news, say, and I wrote it down. I have the quote. And in fact, I'm going to find it after this PowerPoint. We're going to play it. And the world can hear it. And here's what he says. Well, we've had a bigger incident than this one. We had an officer killed. That's what he said. I get it. But that was totally uncalled for. Because it does not help the families to grow and to become resilient. And it also told us a lot about the priorities. And that's why tomorrow's show is going to be really important.
Well, Chris, wasn't tearing the house down also insensitive in that way?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You know what? Everybody tomorrow, you have to be there. And I'm not just pitching this because I want you there. I'm going to point out all of the great things in these reports. And by the way, just so everybody understands, they're holding a lot of information back. You notice we don't have any of the pictures on Brian's phones. You notice we don't have to see, oh, dang it, I used his name. Anyway, I'm sorry. You notice we don't have any of that stuff yet, but tomorrow I've got Billy Little coming on. This guy's handled thousands of cases, and those of you that have been on this channel know me and know Billy. He's handled 17 death penalty cases. 17. And we're going to go over the investigative steps tomorrow. And we're going to show the world. Well, everybody's out there going, yay. Okay, fine, great. Okay. But we're going to point out some things. And go ahead.
Oh, I'm just saying it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to watch.
Yeah. And I mean, grief support groups, these are important. Safe sharing environments, such as this channel.
Right.
Community and understanding. These groups foster a sense of community, allowing individuals to connect with others who understand grief. I found that in a church community for our family. Shared experiences. Those friends and neighbors that were around us at that time, they experienced the grief right alongside of us. And
well, there's something primitive, very primitive about food when it comes to getting together with people and processing things, sharing a meal. In fact, very often when someone passes away and we bury them, we get together for a meal. Freud used to talk about how it reminded him of the way cannibals operate. Somebody is gone and then you take them into yourself. They are introjected into you through when you all get together for the meal, right? And we have that theme in Christianity with construct of the Eucharist, right? It's in fact,
The Irish were known.
yeah, yeah, right. I always thought that as a Roman Catholic, I always thought that Christ was talking about the Eucharist when he said, "Do not be afraid; I'll be with you every day until the end of time," because he literally is, and with the Eucharist. And so I think that those ideas of taking the thing into yourself with the meal and the getting together and talking, and that's what we call introjection, where you take a person that's gone and they now are part of you permanently, and they can't be lost anywhere. They're integrated inside of you. And there's a symbolism to that. You have to understand the importance of that. And one of the ways to do that is to get together with people and talk and share a meal and talk about the person and keep them around, Yeah, right. And I think that's a very beautiful and powerful thing to do. But that point I was making, Chris, about the house,
Yeah.
that's a very important thing to bear in mind. Is you also can't judge people with how long it takes them to let go of things that belonged to the person. Um, you know, if you ever read the marvelous book, what was it called? Oh, that Joan Didion book about loss, the year of. I'll remember it. But it's a wonderful book about how, she had to kind of come to grips with a loss. And do you know the book I'm talking about? What is it? Joan Didion's book on loss. It's one of the best. I think it's the Year of Magical Thinking. Is that it? The Year of Magical Thinking. And she like talks about things like, hey, you don't even want to get rid of the person's shoes, and because in some weird way they might need them, that kind of thing. And we saw that with, yes, that's it, domestic penalty.
I've not read the book. I'm going to read that book.
Oh, it's one of the best on grief. And you think about, as I did the other day, I mentioned on the lab, on Josh Diaz's show, The Lab, I mentioned how when I think you were there, Chris, when on that episode, when Denise Naslund, who was killed by Ted Bundy, how her mother would not move her daughter's car. Her daughter was gone, and she left her daughter's car in front of the house always. Because in some strange way, it's like, once I move that car, it's like she doesn't need it anymore. It's an acceptance. I can't do it, right? I'll tell you a story. I've never told this story to anybody before, but I'll tell you a story. It's a true story. Anyone who knows me knows that I like to collect things. I like antiques and strange things. And one day I went to a thrift store and I found a photo album of photos that were very interesting to me because they were shots of Brooklyn. Not, I grew up in Brooklyn. Shots of Brooklyn from the 1930s. And I noticed that in a lot of the photos was this very interesting looking house, and it had a number on the front. I still remember the number and everything. And I said, I bet I could find that house. I'm going to find this house. And I did. It was complicated, but I found it. And I learned that the person who lived there was actually prominent in a sense. They had been a member of the New York State Supreme Court. And I learned that one of the family members had actually been the head of the Bar Association and had discovered a very prominent politician, and the whole thing. It was quite amazing. And then I learned that the granddaughter of this person worked in the same building as me at the medical center where I worked in the same building.
Wow.
So we arranged to talk. And the person said to me, my grandfather passed away and they took all this stuff and threw it out. And I didn't know what happened to these photos. They were like his prized photos. And by some weird happenstance, they're coming back to me. Because you did this weird thing and looked into who this was. And I never forget. It gives me chills when I think about it. Because the thrift store was selling them as these decontextualized kind of interesting snapshots. And to someone out there, they were memories of a person who was gone. And they have them back, along with other things that were in the thrift shop, the family Bible and other things that I got. So, but it's funny how that works, you know? But they got them back. I'll never forget it. I put them all in a big giant box, and they came up to the house and opened up their trunk. And now they got them all back. Life's weird.
Yeah.
So, but it was all because I needed I wanted to solve a mystery, and the house is still there, and many of the things that are in the snapshot look exactly the same, and it gave me this strange sense of, wow, one day all these things that I have, they're going to wind up in a thrift shop, decontextualized, but they were a life.
What a fascinating story. I mean,
it's true story.
Yeah, I know. The universe is on schedule, but that's unbelievable. And I hope that, I haven't
told that to anybody before,
that Bethany and Dylan, are not forgotten either through this whole process of grief, right? That their grief is a little bit different, but they also experienced loss. They lost all 4 of their friends, and the fear and all the things that, the world came after these girls, these poor, women, and just tore them up. And I love this statement from Caddy, God winks. He sure does.
Yeah.
He sure does. And so hopefully, people realize there are other resources like books on, grief, numerous books provided value, just like what
the one I
mentioned. Was saying. Yeah, The Year of Magical Thinking.
Oh, I love that.
There's another one. I've got like 3 or 4 of them in my bookshelf over here. Online resources. Many online platforms offer resources and community support for individuals navigating through their grief journey. Coping strategies. Accessing the right materials can provide comfort and effective coping strategies during the grief process. Any thoughts on any of these principles, Gary?
I think they're fantastic and essential, and I also want to drive home, because it's so helpful to so many patients, is how helpful it can be to get a pet. That is a big thing for some people. Having something to love. If you've had a partner for many, many years and your partner is gone, it can sometimes help to have a pet. In the Joyce Kenyon poem, Having It Out with Melancholy, she talks about how the dog resting its head on her foot and breathing saves her life. That's a big deal to some people. You know, Chris, how that goes. You've got Buddy.
I do have Buddy, and I'm dreading the day he goes home.
Well, it's. My God, the stories I've heard about pets. I heard a story once about a guy who had a German Shepherd, and when he passed away, the German Shepherd kept going and sitting on his grave because he still smelled his master somehow, and he would go sit there right on top, right by the tomb. I don't know how he did it, how he knew, but he did. And it's a remarkable thing. But I think I want to emphasize that because there's so many pets that need adoption, that that are alone, and probably I almost imagine them thinking, I wish someone would come, and if you're experiencing loneliness, and a lot of times it's one of the best definitions I ever heard. It moved me so much when I heard it. Best definitions of grief I ever heard was, grief is love that has nowhere else to go.
Interesting.
What a powerful thing. It just blows your mind when you grasp that, because what it means is that part of grief is that you've got this love, and now you don't know where to put it anymore. And sometimes you need to have something else. You need something else.
That is a great.
It's such a beautiful thing. One of the best things I ever heard.
Dogs have always been, just huge parts of my heart. And this nut job here, he's down on the floor, by the way, over by the door. And he has brought me so many times, and Karen will tell you, there are just so many times where he'll just know, and he'll come over to me and he'll just sit there and look at me until I reach down to pick him up. And they just know, they can sense it, they can feel it, and they just know where you're at. Cats are the same way. I don't have cats, but I love cats. I love dogs. I love all animals.
Sure.
I mean, I just
I know
cannot.
people with more interesting pets than that.
I can't even watch anything on YouTube or anything like that where an animal's being hurt in any way, shape, or form. You can forget it.
Well, they don't hurt anybody. You know, they're purely innocent.
Well, I just want to reach through the doggone TV or whatever it is, the computer, and I just can't do that with watching people hurt animals. Let's talk about.
Chris, would you mind my asking you?
Oh yeah,
do we know what happened to Kaylee's dog?
Yes, Murphy has his own Instagram channel.
Really?
Yes, and he's
a beautiful dog.
There are videos of him running and in the water and just having this life. And yes, so Murphy has his own Instagram channel. I don't have it in front of me, but you can go to Instagram and he's there. He's with Jack. Jack has Murphy and he's taking care of him. Boy, what a cute peanut that dog is, man. A golden doodle. They are just amazing. Just amazing. So let's talk about community and religious organizations for the grief process. Support service for grief. Community and religious organizations provide vital support services for individuals experience grief and loss. They also provide resources and counseling. These organizations offer various resources and professional counseling to help individuals cope with their emotions. And they also bring a sense of belonging. Being a part of community organization can foster a sense of belonging among those grieving, alleviating loneliness. Gary, what are your thoughts on these 3 points?
Well, I think one of the most powerful things about a religious organization for those who have faith and attend is that a religious organization, for a religious organization, death is a reality that doesn't have to be like an elephant in the room. As a matter of fact, every time you step into a church, you're thinking about death, one way or another, even if it's just because you're looking up at a cross. You're going to think about it. But the point of a religious organization is to look past it and see it as a kind of a vestibule or a stepping stone or a place of transition, a kind of chrysalis from which a butterfly will emerge, what's called an imago. An imago is an emerged butterfly. So that you start to see these as like places of change, and I think that those kinds of environments in which we don't deny the reality of death, but we also accept that we have no lasting home here, the temporariness of it, the transience of it. It also reminds us that, if everything is temporary, then that means the bad stuff is too. Pain is temporary too. It's all going to end somehow. And that those places are a place that remind us of that everything is in flux and change. And then there's the fact that there's community there, and people that, because of their faith, are trying to be better people. They're trying to extend their heart outward. They're going to be a place of love. So there's going to be a place of learning. And yes, Kim, you took the words out of my mouth. The one thing that isn't temporary is love. That has a kind of strange counterpart forever, somewhere in a mystical way. That can never die. Everything else, good and bad, at some point has to be mourned and let go of because it changes. And that's what I love about spiritual settings, is that they are aware of that reality. They accept that reality and they remind you that they are a stepping stone. and that while you're here, there's work to be done for people for whom that short amount of time is difficult. So think, for example, of life and how brief it is, and how every second of your life that you give away is a big deal, because there'll be a day when you have just a couple of seconds left and you want to say something really important, and that second will become super, super important. You'll realize the value of it. And then think of people who take those minutes, those seconds, and are giving them away constantly. Instead of doing something selfish with it, they're giving away all those minutes, those hours like water. The most valuable thing you have is time. The most loving thing you could do is give someone time. And then you understand that these are settings in which people take that little amount of time that they have and they give it away, like instead of using it on themselves. And then you think of the most loving people you've ever known, and you think about how they're on their way somewhere, and you stop them in the street, and they ask you how your day is, and they look at you with eyes that really feel like they care how your day was. And then you tell them how your day was, and they've taken a few minutes of a brief life and listened to you and made your life a little better. And when that happens, those moments, you start to understand what a saint is and what those churches and those settings are teaching people to do. They're teaching you to give, to give. And when you love someone and you lose them, you have to do the giving for them. That's how you keep their life alive. That's how you keep their life alive. And the people that, it's like when you get one of those people who gives the most, because, the one who loves the most wins, as they always say. Those are the people that when they're gone, there's nobody more gone than them. I remember the highest compliment somebody ever gave me. I'll never forget it. The patient said to me, "I hope nothing ever happens to you, Dr. Brucato." I said, "Why not?" And they said, "There won't be anything deader than a dead Dr. Brucato." And that meant the world to me, because what they meant was you do so much. When you're not here, you'll really be missed. And you're like that too, Chris. There are people like that. And what am I doing? Nothing. Just listening, talking, helping, giving time away. So when you've lost someone, do it for them. Be the hands for them. That's how you make meaning out of it. And that's how you keep them alive. You do the loving for them, and then you've transcended death. And that's what happens. That's how people who make sense out of death, it's because they've taken it and they've given something back to fill the hole that's been left by somebody being taken. That's the key. And I hope that people understand that. Give and give and give and give and give. That's how you.
Don't we just love this guy, everybody? I mean, he's just an amazing soul, and you're a vessel that the Lord works through.
There's a lot of trouble too.
If you're in Manhattan, and his laugh is just infectious. It's the joy that he knows this is exactly what we wanted to accomplish tonight. Yeah. Give this presentation for those who need to heal, the families of these children. So
that's you giving time, Chris.
Well, it's us giving time. We're, like you said, we become his hands, and
Correct.
the greatest gift we could ever give, and the greatest exercise we could ever do, is lift somebody else up.
And remember Bunyan, the line of poetry that says, "A man there was, though some did think him mad, the more he gave away, the more he had." That's the paradox of life. The only way to gain it is to give it. Remember that movie, It's a Wonderful Life?
Yes, love it.
And there's that picture of the father on the wall when he dies. That the actor Samuel Hines plays him, and he dies, and they have a big framed portrait of him. The Bailey patriarch. If you look really, really closely, in tiny letters under the father, there's a quote, and it says, "All you can take with you is that which you give away." That's the idea. And so, I want to put that out there to people, that the measure of a life, because when we think about the perpetrator in this crime, remember that kind of person is already in hell because they don't have love. And a person who lives a brief life and is loved, they're already in heaven, even in this life. And that's why the darkness looks at a person like that and envies them. But no matter what they do, they can't kill it. The light cannot be killed by the darkness, no matter how hard it tries. That's the thing you want to remember. So they're not gone. They're just changed.
Wow.
And see, it never can be destroyed. And so you look at that pathetic person sitting in a courtroom and you think, you're already in hell. You're already in hell because you don't know what it is to love anything.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Cat H, tomorrow. And hopefully you join us tomorrow night at the 8 o'clock Eastern. So in conclusion this evening, two things.
It was very powerful. It was very powerful. I hope it was for you. It was for me.
It was extremely powerful. And we hope that everybody out there hopefully you'll take something out of this presentation tonight. Here's Murphy's account. Thank you, Teresa.
Oh, good. I want
his Instagram account is Murphy_consolvents. So GONCALVES, Murphy_consolvents. And we hope that if the families have been watching tonight, we pray that this messaging this evening will give you something to reflect back on to, and hopefully we've been able to help you. Also, I am Two Bear. If you can't have a pet, most humane societies love dog walkers. So in conclusion, a personal journey of grief. Each person's experience with grief is unique, requiring individual time, support to heal. The families are going through this while all the lights and cameras are on other people. The lights and cameras are diminishing from the family. And they need space, they need time, they need understanding, and they need support. As do all the individuals involved in this, Bethany, Dylan, etc. We saw how far down that trench they are. Acknowledge grief aspects. Recognize the different facets of grief can help. Recognizing the different facets of grief can help individuals process their emotions more effectively. Then utilizing resources. Assessing available support resources can provide essential help during the healing process.
Absolutely.
And then, of course,
Chris, whenever I think about Karen, I always think the most beautiful people I've ever known are the people who love a person who loves a lot of people. You get this kind of lonely soul that lives their whole life giving their time away to everybody else, and there's only one person that gives to them. And that person, you just imagine the weight, because they're lifting a person who's lifting everybody. And it really makes you want to hold that person close and say, my God, what would I do without you? I could get through anything as long as you're here. And, you're lucky to have Karen. She's a wonderful soul.
I would not be who I am today without Karen.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And every one of us have a person that if we just took a couple of seconds and thought about it, there's somebody out there who kind of helped bring us to fruition. Remember the famous video on YouTube of Mr. Rogers when he got up to win his Lifetime Achievement Award, and he told everybody in the audience, I'm going to watch the clock. I'm going to watch my watch for 15 seconds. And during the 15 seconds, I want you to think about somebody who loved you and to who you are. And everybody started crying in the audience, all these people with their fancy evening gowns and their kind of jewelry on. They were all bawling because it's true. And so when we think about loss, take a minute and also think about the living and the people that aren't lost. And make sure you tell them how you feel about them. Hug them a little close because they're here. And that can happen too. Sometimes you can get so caught up and lost that you forget what you have. what's not lost, and that's important too.
You know, I also wrote a song about Karen.
I'm not surprised.
If you go down into
She
the poem there,
inspires songs.
it's called
Yeah.
When I Saw You.
Yeah.
And it's in there. And here's the crazy thing. You know, I can't play those songs on YouTube
Really?
because I had to upload them to get them onto YouTube through a service.
Oh.
And they make me take them down, believe this or not, as a copyright violation.
Oh.
My own music. But you can listen to it if you want something. It's down in our playlist anyway. So honoring loss, finding ways to honor the memory of loved ones can be a crucial part of moving forward. We see Ethan's family has created a foundation in his name. And there are other family members that are moving forward. I think there will be some laws that will come out of this with
there's some meaning making
with family. And this is our son. And so
such a handsome boy.
He is. And thank goodness he looked like his mother. So, when they looked at me and, they said, oh, he's got your legs, when they looked at him when he was a baby. Anyway, that said, we are
it has a hockey symbol on it.
Yeah, on his, you see the number 18 on the right?
Yeah.
That's
What's that on the left?
That's the Claddagh from Ireland.
Oh, yes, like the ring.
Yeah, his smile and laughter lit up the world. Loving son, brother, friend to all. Ryan McDonough.
But Chris, that's not where he is.
I know.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, everybody. We sure love you. We're grateful for each and every one of you, Gary. I can never say enough. I've got Billy on tonight, but to talk legal stuff. And
yeah, wait. He's a brilliant guy, Chris.
Billy is like
eminent.
Yeah. He's the sledgehammer.
Oh yeah.
And guys and gals, if you're able to make it tomorrow night, seriously, you have to come on with Billy Little. If you've never met him, he's like you of the legal world. I mean, his mind
tells it like it is. He's going to tell it like it is.
Well, not only that, he's represented some of the most, interesting people. A lot of cases behind the scenes that he's been involved in. He's very humble, but my gosh, he knows the law. Right. And I've just been grateful to call him a friend all these years. And of course, he's on the foundation with us, Gary. Yeah. So he's our legal counsel for the foundation. So tomorrow night, 8:00 Eastern, we're going to have Billy Little on. And the question's going to be, we're going to review all of the law enforcement reports. And then we're going to have 5 questions. Would Thompson have won the case without the DNA? And now I have to show you this. I have to find it real fast. Okay, I have to be careful. Not violate anything. But I need to find, I think this is the first part. Okay, here's the, I think this is the quick statement here. I gotta play it tomorrow. But when you hear this, you guys tell me what you think. You can hear it. I hope you can hear it. Hang on, I gotta play it. I'm setting it up, guys. So they worked several homicides and his career, and they had to keep working at it till they figured it out. But here was the very first thing he said. Hang on, let me go back and find it.
While you're looking for that, I'll answer the question. Shirley,
Yeah.
that's the question about BK, and my answer is I don't want to talk about him tonight.
Yeah, we're not talking about him tonight.
Not interested in him. I think that tonight is about the victims, and there'll be other times when that kind of thing is discussed. It's not for now, but it's a really important question. It's just not for now.
Yep.
I think let's use tonight to put the focus on the healing. Don't you agree, Chris?
It's
No. Don't be sorry, Shirley. It's a great question. We'll just get to it on a night when we're talking about that. If you write to me, I'll tell you. I'll answer it.
Okay, this is how the chief starts his conversation. And if you want to hear the whole thing, go to Law and Crime Network and you can hear it. But this is what he says. This is how he starts the conversation. They've had some bigger incidences. That's how he started the conversation. First time on TV. To me, I don't know. Maybe I'm old school, but that said. Aloha, everybody. We love you. Be here tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss it. And please share this around your social media networks. We'd be grateful. Dr. Gary, thank you again. And we'll talk in a minute.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away, you and me, go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.